regarding the challenge to women's rights in Cambodia. Well, the major challenge we have been facing is to try to combat ignorance through promoting education to Cambodian, not only women but men. Men have to recognize and uphold women's rights. As in the old days, like Dr. Hema mentioned rightly, Dr. Intra Devi in the old days of the Angkor era, there were many women who were highly educated, we call doctor in those days. Before the war, Cambodian women were recognized of their competency because of their education. Unfortunately, during the war, men were pulled to the war, got killed. Women were injured or got caught in crossfire and got killed. After the war, women were left with very heavy burden. There are thousands of women now living in Cambodia who are heads of household. Surprisingly, there are women now taking men's job, such as climb up very high palm tree to collect palm juice with heavy load of palm juice down from the tree, and then get more firewood, turn the palm juice into sugar and go to the market to sell, come back late afternoon, prepare for the next session of climbing up 50 to 60 palm trees to collect enough juice. I never saw any women climbing up palm trees before, but now there are women, and not very far here at Tunli Bati, Kampong Kuntut. Yes, women now steering the plow. The major challenge is poverty and ignorance. We got to combat poverty and we got to combat ignorance. Providing education, providing them with means to earn day-to-day living, to help them alleviate poverty, that will help them join the mainstream society. So that's my quick answer. But at the same time, we have to educate Cambodian men to learn how to respect Cambodian women. I hate to call tradition. I don't accept this as a tradition. You women sit in the kitchen. It's your place. I don't accept that. And I heard quite often in this society, I have to confess. Sad to hear that. We have to educate men to accept women as equal partners. You can work in the office, women can work in the office. Men can be engineers, women can also be engineers. Men can be pilot, why not women as pilot? As a result, today, 120 members of parliament, there are only 7 women, less than 5%. That's not a fair share. There are no women ministers in this society, not yet. One woman vice governor of Stung Treng province for the whole country. The rest are all men. I think we should promote women's leadership, we should promote women's competency, and we should promote the recognition of women's ability in the mind of Cambodian men. Well, my Cambodian men might see me, oh, Kasi, is he a man or a woman? Well, I am a man, of course, but I think it's fair to recognize women's ability in our society. Whether we like it or not, 63% of the population of Cambodia are women. If we ignore women's ability, means we ignore the great force of production in Cambodia. So economically, we have to also recognize women's ability in Cambodia. Thank you.
សូមគោរពអង្គសន្តិបាទខ្ញុំជាតំណាងដូនជីនៃប្រទេសកម្ពុជាសូមស្វាគមន៍ចំពោះប្រិយមិត្តទាំងអស់ដែលបានអញ្ជើញមកតាមបណ្ដាប្រទេសដូនជីកម្ពុជាមានសេចក្តីសង្ឃឹមទៅអនាគតព្រោះការកន្លងមកទោះបីលំបាកយ៉ាងណាក៏ដោយដូនជីតស៊ូពុះពៀឧបសគ្គគ្រប់បែបយ៉ាងក្រោយពីការរស់រានមានជីវិតឡើងវិញដូនជីមិនបានមានកើតការប្រមូលផ្ដុំគ្នាដោយការមូលនិធិហិនរិចបូលនេះនៅឆ្នាំ1995ដូច្នេះអនាគតដូនជីកម្ពុជាមិនទាន់អស់សង្ឃឹមទេដើម្បីកាន់ដៃគ្នាប្រឈមមុខតទល់នឹងការលំបាកដើម្បីឲ្យដូនជីកម្ពុជារកសុខសន្តិភាពទៅអនាគត
Respected Venerable Monks and Nuns, distinguished guests, this question was asked and I want to answer it, and I'm trying to make clear that we have to overcome a lot of difficulties, and it is also to be noted here that we have just started in 1995 with this conference, and this was the moment when we started organizing ourselves. So it is still a very young movement, but we are not hopeless that we can achieve quite a lot of things in the future, but we have to be patient and we have to get training.
ពោលឲ្យខ្លីគឺដូនជីទូទាំងប្រទេសកម្ពុជាទាមទារសុខសន្តិភាពពោលគឺសេចក្តីស្ងប់សុខតែប៉ុណ្ណោះសូមអស់យោបល់
But the most important thing for us to achieve this is that the country needs to find peace. In a peaceful society, in a society that provides us with silence in our heart, we can develop our own Buddhist attitude in this sense. Okay, okay.
Chúngខ្ញុំក៏សូមគោរពអង្គសិក្ខាសាលាទាំងអស់ដែលជាភ្ញៀវអន្តរជាតិនិងភ្ញៀវជាតិទាំងអស់ខ្ញុំសូមលើកពីបញ្ហាដូនជីនៅប្រទេសកម្ពុជាដែលយើងអាចមានសង្ឃឹមទៅអនាគតនៅទីកន្លែងខ្ញុំជាការជាក់ស្ដែងនៅទីក្រុងកំពង់សោមវត្តអូត្រេសដូចជាអ្នកស្រីហៃខឺគាត់បានលើកឡើងហើយនៅទីកន្លែងនោះជាទីកន្លែងមួយស្ងាត់ហើយក៏មានប្រជាជនតិចដែរហើយខ្ញុំសង្ឃឹមថាដែលអាចកើតឡើងដូនជីរបស់កម្ពុជានេះដោយការអភិវឌ្ឍនិងការអនុវត្តខ្លួនឯងជាក់ស្ដែងក្នុងការរៀនក្តីក្នុងការរៀបចំក្នុងវត្តក្តីដើម្បីជិះខ្លួនឯងនិងខ្ញុំបណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលទៅដល់ក្មេងកូនសិស្សដែលនៅក្នុងភូមិនោះម្ល៉េះហើយប្រជាជននៅក្នុងភូមិនោះគេមានការយកចិត្តទុកដាក់គាំទ្រប្រជាជននៅក្នុងវត្តរបស់ខ្ញុំជាច្រើនហើយខ្ញុំក៏បានរៀបចំទីពឹងខ្លួនឯងសម្រាប់អនាគតគឺខ្ញុំបានដាក់បិណ្ឌបានពឹងទៅលើប្រជាជននៅទីនោះគេបានជួយគាំទ្រនិងឧបត្ថម្ភសម្រាប់ដូនជីភាគច្រើនដែលខ្ញុំបានរៀបចំនៅទីវត្តនោះគឺដូនជីជាអ្នកទៅចាត់ចែងដើម្បីរៀបចំឲ្យខ្ញុំបាននិមន្តលោកដើម្បីជាការគាំទ្រទៅដោយសារទីកន្លែងនោះនៅឆ្ងាយដាច់ស្រយាលពីគេហើយខ្ញុំសង្ឃឹមថាខ្ញុំអាចរៀបចំខ្លួនឯងឲ្យបានស្អាតត្រឹមត្រូវក្នុងធម៌វិន័យរបស់ព្រះពុទ្ធនិងខ្ញុំបានអប់រំទូមានសម្រាប់ដើម្បីដូចជាមានការដោះដាលទៅអនាគតទាល់មានការគាំទ្រពីប្រជាជនហើយដូចជាយើងខ្ញុំក៏បានជួយអប់រំសម្រាប់កុមារនៅក្នុងសាលា
So I have to try to summarize. But I didn't want to interrupt. It was very energetic. So the future of the Donjis lays in the our hope lays in the future, she said. And then she said, let me tell you my very own example. This is in the Wat Otre in Kampong Saum province. It is a very remote area. The Wat was destroyed. There were only a very few monks living. So we've taken this chance to settle down there. and to establish our own ideas and place and buildings. So this is not only a small Dhamma center for the Donjis, but there are in the meanwhile only 2 schools built for the kids who had no access to a school education, to primary school education before we have settled down at that place. And we have initiated the school for the children, and we got the support from the Ministry of Education. And apart from helping the society and also the parents of these kids, we are developing our own. We are trying to deepen our knowledge of the teaching of Lord Buddha. We are trying to follow the Dhammic path, and we are trying to find silence and peace for our own to be able to help others. So this is a very unique example, but it shows where it can go to in the future. Thank you.
ហើយដូចជានៅកន្លែងខ្ញុំនេះវាមានព្រៃឈើច្រើនប៉ុន្តែកាប់អស់ច្រើនដែរហើយខ្ញុំក៏រៀបចំដើម្បីបណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលកូនឈើនឹងចាប់ដាំឡើងវិញហើយខ្ញុំក៏បានបង្រៀនសម្រាប់កូនក្មេងកុមារនៅទីនោះឲ្យចេះជួយដាំកូនឈើដូចជានៅតាមវត្តរបស់ខ្ញុំនៅហើយនៅតាមភូមិខ្លះអានឹងខ្ញុំក៏បានបង្កើតរៀបចំបរិស្ថានឡើងវិញ
I'm trying to initiate programs to educate not only the kids but also their parents to take care of ecological aspects and to organize some small reforestation activities like planting trees here and there and making them growing, because there is a lot of forest, but there is also, especially as it is a coastal region, a lot of sand, so it's a hard deal to reforest in this area, but it is worth the effort.
ជាបញ្ចប់ទៅអនាគតសម្រាប់ដូនជីដូចជាខ្លួនខ្ញុំផ្ទាល់ត្រូវការជួយខ្លួនឯងឲ្យបានចេះដឹងសម្រាប់ជួយអ្នកដទៃដើម្បីឲ្យអ្នកចេះដឹងក្នុងការនៅក្នុងសង្គមខ្មែរត្រូវមានវប្បធម៌និងអរិយធម៌ល្អតើតែយើងចេះអប់រំខ្លួនឯងនិងជួយបណ្ដុះបណ្ដាលទៅក្មេងជំនាន់ក្រោយនិងនឹងអាចមានការទៅមុខឈាន
about the fact that Donji Somui focuses on self-reliance. She says this is the most important thing, that we are supporting our own, that we are building our own resources. We cannot depend if we want to sustain for a longer time. And so she said there are 2 things that need to be addressed. Self-reliance psycho-mentally.
Has been a great start for our conference, that all of you have shared so much of your knowledge and your encouragement and kept to the time limit also. So thank you all for your good questions, and thank you especially to our Donji for participating. That is really what we want to do, is to communicate on a grassroots level. Now I have just a couple of announcements. One is that registration will be held from 12 o'clock to 1. Those who have not yet registered, please come to the conference registration between 12 o'clock and 1. Second, if there are people who have talents that they would like to share as a cultural presentation in our evening programs, songs, dances, or storytelling, please come to see me. It can be short, 5 or 10 minutes, so please let me know. Yes, those who
want to go to Angkor Wat have the last chance now to register, because we have to hand over a list of names who are participating for an allowance to go there. So please come and I will put you on the list. Thank you.
then next, I would like to ask the following people to help us as discussion leaders in the afternoon. If you could, these people are Trina, Luann, Coco, Yeshe Palmo, Nirmala Salgado, Norma Pratt, Francis Kisling, Heike Lishman. Oh, we need one more. Oh, no, Nancy did not. And Elizabeth Harris, please. If you could please come at 10 minutes to 1. We will meet here at 10 minutes to 1 for a short orientation. The last point is, at the lunch, as we go through the lunch line, could we please make the line on this side of the dining room for the nuns, and the far side of the table for the lay people. In this culture, it doesn't look good for the nuns to be waiting behind the lay people for their lunch. So please help us guide the nuns to this line, and lay people please follow the line on this side of the dining room.
Could you just introduce her name and her title on the table?
គាត់សូមឲ្យលោកយាយបង្ហាញមកខ្លួនឈ្មោះហើយនឹងតាមវិធី
ខ្ញុំឈ្មោះដូនជីតំបនជាគណៈកម្មការសមាគមដូនជីនិងអបាសិកាកម្ពុជា
So my name is Donchi Damron and I'm a member of the executive committee of the Association of Donkeys and Labor of the Kingdom of Cambodia.
And she was the first president.
Right.
And now where does she live? Where is her what?
គាត់ចង់ដឹងថានេះលោកយាយរស់នៅស្នាក់នៅវត្តណាកន្លែងណា
បច្ចុប្បន្នខ្ញុំរស់នៅវត្តសម្ពោធមាសចម្ងាយ6 គីឡូម៉ែត្រពីទីក្រុងភ្នំពេញ
So I'm living in what Tampumir. This is around 7 kilometers from here.
When did she become a Donchi, and was it a hard decision to make?
ដល់ពេលណាលោកយាយបានស្វែងចិត្តថាចង់ទៅជាដូនជីហើយបានជាសតិសម្រេចចិត្តដែលពិបាកក៏យ៉ាងម៉េច
ខ្ញុំការដែលចេញពីចំនួនប៉ុលពតមកឃើញថាបែកបាក់គ្រួសារស្លាប់កូន6នាក់ក៏ត្រូវស្លាប់ហើយដូច្នេះនៅសល់សប្តាហ៍ថ្ងៃនៅសល់កូនស្រីមួយប្រុសមួយហើយគ្មានទីពឹងអីដូច្នេះខ្ញុំគ្រាន់បងកូនឲ្យបានមានការងារធ្វើទាំងពីរនាក់ទៅខ្ញុំក៏ដោះខ្លួនទៅបដិបត្តិធម៌
So after 79, after the Pol Pot regime, I had lost my family and I had 6 children and only 2 of them survived. And so now I'm having only 1 son and 1 daughter. So my family life was broken and I had to struggle to make me and my 2 children survive. But it was then later that I had decided to give up the life as a labourman.
And what year was that?
អានេះបានជាឆ្នាំណាយាយបានចូលជា
ខ្ញុំបានមកចូលបដិបត្តិជាដូនជីក្នុងឆ្នាំ1984
This was in 84.
Right. When she gave up the ordinary life and entered the sorry?
The temple?
The temple, yes. Did she get lots of strange reactions from people in society? Did they tell her, why are you doing this? Why are you giving this all up? You have no right to do this because you cannot be as good as reach the level of the monks.
គាត់សុំសួរថាតើនៅពេលវេលាដែលលោកយាយបានស្រេចចិត្តថាជប់រស់នៅដូចជាឧបាសិកាធម្មតាក៏បានទៅស្លៀកពាក់ជាវត្តសហើយបានកោសក់តើអ្នកជិតខាងឬក៏មិត្តភ័ក្តិឬក៏អ្នកឯទៀតដែលយាយស្គាល់តើគេបានប្រតិកម្មអីដូចជាគេនិយាយយ៉ាងម៉េចពីព្រោះឧបមាថាគេប្រហែលជាសង្ស័យថាយើងអាចហួសទៅជាលោកដូច្នេះតើមូលហេតុអីដែលយើងគួរឲ្យហួសទៅជាយ៉ាងម៉េចអញ្ចឹង
ចាជាដំបូងឡើងខ្ញុំ មុននឹងចូលមកបប្រតិបត្តិជាដូនជីខ្ញុំធ្វើជាឧបាសិកាចំនួន2ឆ្នាំទៅរក្សាសិលមួយខែ4ដងគឺអបោសតសិលចំនួន2ឆ្នាំដល់បន្តមកទៀតខ្ញុំក៏បានជួបប្រទះនឹងលោកគ្រូធម្មាចារ្យដែលគាត់មកដឹកនាំសិស្សានុសិស្សឲ្យបានរៀនសូត្រពធខ្ញុំក៏សម្រេចចិត្តទៅចូលបួសជាដូនជីតាំងពីឆ្នាំ84មកហ្នឹង
See, it was a step-by-step process. It was not decided from one day to the other. Like in '84, I have decided overnight to become a donji. I had already obtained 5 precepts as the so-called upasika, still a lay woman, but taking 5 precepts and taking also Dhamma studies with a monk teacher, so that I got prepared for that entering the donjihood in this sense.
In Cambodian society, how do people regard the donjis? Do they regard them as inferior to the monks? Do the donjis themselves find it difficult to practice their religion, their faith in Cambodian society? Is there a bit of suspicion because they're not at the higher level?
គាត់សូមសួរថាតើនៅសង្គមខ្មែរបច្ចុប្បន្នវាយ៉ាងម៉េចតើដូនជីហើយប្រជាជនគេគិតឃើញអំពីដូនជីយ៉ាងណាពីព្រោះគាត់ទៅចិត្តចង់ដឹងថាការខុសគ្នារវាងលោកនិងដូនជីយ៉ាងម៉េចដល់ប្រជាជនគិតថាដូនជីមានតម្លៃតិចជាងឬក៏យ៉ាងម៉េច
ប្រជាជនគេតែងធ្វើបុណ្យហើយគេរាប់អានចំពោះភិក្ខុសង្ឃយ៉ាងណាគេធ្វើបុណ្យគេរាប់អានចំពោះដូនជីក៏យ៉ាងនោះដែរគេមានសទ្ធាជ្រះថ្លាស្មើគ្នាប៉ុន្តែគ្រាន់តែខុសគ្នាត្រង់ថាភិក្ខុលោកមានសិក្ខាបទ227ខ្ពស់ជាងដូនជីមានតែកម្មបទ80ខុសគ្នាប៉ុណ្ណឹង
So are more visible in the temple life. But when people come to practice in the Vats and they worship, then they are worshipping the monks equally to the donjis. And it is very much a personal decision of the people who come and worship, because they usually go to their Vats, to where their families are linked for years. And so if a donji reaches a certain level, then they consider us also equal to monks. Reaches a certain level in education, so it's not so much of a difference.
But in your paper, you said when the association was first formed, there was suspicion. People didn't like to give the food to the donjis because they thought, well, we cannot get merit for that, and they were thinking also they're not much better than lay women, so why should we regard them as higher spiritual?
នេះគាត់សុំសួរថាពីព្រោះខ្ញុំបានធ្វើសន្ទរកថាពីរបស់ខ្ញុំបានថាកាលមុនដំបូងឡើងមានមនុស្សខ្លះតែមានការសង្ស័យតើមូលហេតុអីជាការចាយលុយឬក៏ប្រងខំដើម្បីដូនជីគួរឲ្យទុកកម្លាំងអានឹងសម្រាប់លោកទៅវិញណាដូច្នេះគាត់សួរឆ្ងល់អំពីចម្លើយរបស់លោកយាយដូចជាអត់មានការខុសគ្នាទេ
អញ្ចឹងឆ្ងល់ពីប្រជាជនណាប្រជាជនដែលគេមានសទ្ធាជ្រះថ្លាជាមួយលោកសង្ឃហើយនឹងដូនជីអញ្ចឹងណាប្រជាជនដែលគេមានសទ្ធាជ្រះថ្លាចំពោះភិក្ខុសង្ឃហើយនឹងដូនជីហេតុអីក៏មានសទ្ធាជ្រះថ្លាដូចគ្នាព្រោះគេបានស្ដាប់តាមរយៈព្រះសង្ឃខ្លះទេសនាវែកញែកអំពីពុទ្ធិការបស់ព្រះសម្មាសម្ពុទ្ធផងហើយបានគេមានជំនឿជឿជាក់ចំពោះព្រះសង្ឃហើយមកចំណែកទៀតដូនជីក៏បានជួយអប់រំដល់ប្រជាជនតាមផ្នែកពធដែលគាត់បានរៀនចេះដឹងហ្នឹងណាឲ្យគាត់មានកើតសទ្ធាហើយគាត់ក៏បានចេះធ្វើបុណ្យធ្វើទានអញ្ចឹងរហូតមកក៏មានការសទ្ធាជ្រះថ្លាចំពោះព្រះសង្ឃផងក៏មានសទ្ធាជ្រះថ្លាចំពោះដូនជីផង
Maybe one cannot answer this question so general. She said that I have my very own experience and I'm highly appreciated by the people who are living around the Wat where I live because of my Dhamma knowledge and because of my meditating experience. another donchi may refer to that question in another way because of her experience, and it also very much depends on how the abbot of the Wat supports and considers the donchis. And what I was referring to in my speech was that people think this way. It doesn't mean that everybody thinks this way, but these voices are also heard. So it is a matter of time that it needs to be proved that these people are wrong.
When you decided to take the 8 precepts, what did this mean to you? Why is it important? And spiritually, why did you take this decision? Why do you think other women in Cambodia are also taking this decision? Is it a unique thing because of the historical aspect of Cambodia? Many women have seen suffering, so much suffering and pain and killing, that entering the Wat seems more attractive than maybe it does in other countries.
គាត់សំសួរអំពីមូលហេតុសច្ចាណាមូលហេតុសច្ចានិងបំណងទៅពោះតើបើប្រៀបធៀបកាលមុននឹងពោះកាលនឹងពោះហើយខុសគ្នាយ៉ាងម៉េចហើយមូលហេតុអីដែលលោកយាយបានស្រចេះអញ្ចឹងហើយការខុសគ្នាឥឡូវនេះយ៉ាងម៉េចនេះបានជួយយ៉ាងណាក្នុងជីវិតរបស់លោកចា៎
កាលពីដើមឡើយយើងមិនទាន់បានរៀនសូត្រធម៌របស់ព្រះសម្មាសម្ពុទ្ធដោយថាមានចិត្តផ្សេងណាយើងទៅមានសទ្ធាជាដំបូងដល់ក្រោយមកយើងបានរៀនសូត្រនៅធម៌ហើយបានឃើញទុក្ខឃើញទោសរបស់បញ្ញខណ្ឌឃើញទុក្ខទោសរបស់ខ្លួននេះកើតមកវាទុក្ខវាទោសច្រើនវាព្រាត់ប្តីព្រាត់កូនព្រាត់ចៅព្រាត់សម្បត្តិទ្រព្យអីទាំងអស់ដូច្នេះហើយគ្មានអីទីពឹងដូច្នេះយើងបានរៀនសូត្រពាក្យព្រានបដៅរបស់ព្រះសម្មាសម្ពុទ្ធឃើញជាក់ហើយអញ្ចឹងយើងក៏បដិបត្តិធ្វើចិត្តឲ្យស្ងប់ដូច្នេះហើយយើងឃើញទោសអញ្ចឹងហើយមានការនឿយណាយដល់មានការនឿយណាយហើយយើងលែងចង់បានអីទាំងអស់ដូចចិត្តយើងស្ងប់អញ្ចឹង
It is a spiritual experience. The decision to give up the normal life as a lay woman was a spiritual experience and already the result of some spirituality and Lord Buddha's teaching. Because if you recognize on your very own what the cause of the suffering is, and you are living in a society which is full of suffering, then you have to find for your own a strategy how to overcome this. Otherwise, you would not be able to survive for psycho-mental reasons. So it was very important for me, she said, to deepen my knowledge on the Buddhist wisdom, to develop my own strategy in society and to find my place in society. And the Buddhist teaching showed me the way.
Why did she feel it was important to form an association of donchis? What does she hope this will achieve in future years?
ឥឡូវនេះគាត់សុំសួរអំពីមូលហេតុអីតែលោកយាយក៏បានជាអ្នកបំផុសដំបូងឡើងឲ្យមានចលនាដូនជីឲ្យមានសមាគមដូនជីដែលវាមានបច្ចុប្បន្នតើមូលហេតុអីមានសង្ឃឹមអីដែលតកតងនឹងនេះ
កាលពីដំបូងឡើងខ្ញុំមូលហេតុបានស្ដាប់នៅពាក្យព្រានបដៅរបស់ព្រះសម្មាសម្ពុទ្ធនៅតាមរយៈលោកទេសខ្លះតាមរយៈគ្រូដែលឲ្យអាវាតដល់ដូនជីដែលយើងទៅរៀនជាមួយហ្នឹងណាហើយដូច្នេះហើយយើងបានស្ដាប់នៅពាក្យព្រានបដៅរបស់ព្រះសម្មាសម្ពុទ្ធទៅឃើញរបស់អ្វីក៏មិនទៀងរបស់អីក៏ជាទុក្ខរបស់ជាតែអនត្តាគ្មានស្អីជារបស់ខ្លួនឃើញតែរបស់សោះសូន្យទេដូច្នេះហើយអត់មានសង្ឃឹមអីនឹងរស់នៅតទៅទៀតឃើញថាវាគ្មានបានផលប្រយោជន៍អីក្នុងការរស់ស៊ីនឹងតទៅទៀតទេចំពោះរូបយើងតែចំពោះរូបកូនចៅអាហ្នឹងឲ្យគេគិតធ្វើតាមធម្មតាតាមជីវិតរបស់គេចឹងណាតែចំពោះរូបយើងដូចថាយើងឈប់ចង់បានចង់មានទៀតហើយដូចថាកាលពីដើមមកយើងធ្លាប់ធ្វើសពគ្រប់អស់ហើយតែដូចថារបស់របរបានមកហើយវាត្រូវវិនិច្ឆ័យអស់ព្រោះថាធម៌មិនទៀងដូច
គាត់សួរអំពីចលនាដូនជីអំពីសមាគមដល់
ពេលខ្ញុំមកដល់នៅរៀននៅវត្តសម្បួរមាសហ្នឹងថ្ងៃក្រោយមកក៏មានលោកស្រីច័ន្ទសុបិនវីហើយនឹងលោកស្រីខាងនេះទៅសាកសួរ ដើម្បីរកដូនជីតាមវត្តយកមកចូលសន្និសីទលើកទី1នៅព្រែកហូដូច្នេះហើយបានបង្កើតសន្និសីទសមាគមដូនជីលើកទី1ក៏បានជួបជុំគ្នាហើយបានយល់អំពីសកម្មភាពរបស់ដូនជីតាំងពីលើកទី1នោះរហូតមកក៏មានការបោះឆ្នោតហើយនឹងរើសជាគណៈកម្មការសមាគមដូនជីចំពោះចំនួន11រូបដល់រើសបានគណៈកម្មការ11រូបហើយក៏បានយកមករៀនវឹកវើនៅក្រមកฎមហាកฎនេះចំនួន4ថ្ងៃរួចពីការរៀនសូត្រថ្នាក់ដឹកនាំ4ថ្ងៃហើយក៏ចាប់បោះឆ្នោតរើសជាប្រធានសមាគមដូនជីនិងអនុប្រធាននិងហេរញ្ញិកតាំងចាប់ពីពេលនោះមកក៏ខ្ញុំបានជាប់ជាប្រធានសមាគមដូនជីនៅអាណត្តិទី1ចំនួន2ឆ្នាំលុះផុតអាណត្តិទី1 2ឆ្នាំហើយចូលមកដល់អាណត្តិទី2បានបោះឆ្នោតរើសប្រធានដូនជីថ្មីទៀតចូលជាអាណត្តិទី2ចា៎
So she was first referring to her very personal experience and again saying why she had entered the Donchihood because she said I had been sort of a business lady in the sense that I had to earn my living for the family, and so this didn't bring satisfaction. Of course, it gave the support for the family, but when the children were brought up, there was no sense anymore. Then I had to remind her what the question was, and she said, "Okay, I was practicing then from '84 on in the Wat, and I was studying, and then." Ms. Chan Supunui and this person, just me, we came and we're looking for candidates who are interested and also able and capable in attending the first conference, which was to assess the possibilities and needs of donjis and also to discuss the role that donjis can take in the reconciliation process. And then she was referring to the fact that immediately after during the conference, a board of members, a board of the association was elected, 9 members, and they have been trained here in this kuti for 4 days as the first leadership training. And so since then, we have been having many trainings on different issues and are now spraying all over the country. And this helps us to make other people who may feel the same as I, she said, also able to live the same way, also to give up because of dissatisfaction and to find a spiritual way and the spiritual satisfaction in life.
Does she ever hope that donjis can achieve full ordination in the way that nuns do in other countries, or is it still a long way off in Cambodia that they have to concentrate on other building blocks at the moment?
គាត់សុំសួរជាយន្តរួមមួយដែលគាត់ដូចជាចង់ដឹងណាស់តើលោកយាយគិតយ៉ាងម៉េចតើនៅអនាគតដូនជីនៅស្រុកខ្មែរក៏អាចពុះដូចជាពីកូនីដូចជាស្មៅនឹងពីកុគ្រូក៏យ៉ាងម៉េច
ខ្ញុំនឹកសង្ឃឹមថាតទៅមុខទៀតប្រហែលជាមានដូនជីខ្មែរមួយចំនួននឹងបានបួសជាភិក្ខុនីខ្លះឬក៏មិនទៀង
កុំសើច
ព្រោះអីបើតាមខ្ញុំដឹងមានដូនជីខ្មែរមួយចំនួនចង់បួសជាភិក្ខុនី
I think so. I very much hope that at least a few of the donjis in Cambodia will be able to ordain as full bhikkhunis equal to men. I think they have the capacity. We shouldn't expect all of the donjis to be able to and even willing to ordain as a bhikkhuni because it's a matter of knowledge. We have to first achieve the basic knowledge and then to apply for the real nansut. Also for historical reasons, we would not do it just out of the stage where it is now. But a few, I think, could do it in a couple of years.
In a few years' time?
No? ប្រហែល ជាប្រហែលឆ្នាំទៅមុខ
មិនទៀង
I wouldn't like to guess how many years it would last because it depends on how the process goes.
Mean to enter the Donchihood, and what do you think? Why do you think so many women in Cambodia are joining?
គាត់សួរមូលហេតុអីលោកយាយហើយប្រហែលជាលោកយាយឯទៀតមានសទ្ធាមានបំណងបួសជាដូនជីនៅស្រុកខ្មែរ
ហេតុដែលមានបំណងចង់បួសជាភិក្ខុនីនៅស្រុកខ្មែរព្រោះគាត់មិនចង់ធ្វើជាដូនជីអញ្ចឹងទៀតទេគាត់ចង់បប្រតិបត្តិឲ្យមានគុណធម៌ខ្ពង់ខ្ពស់ជានឹងតទៅទៀតហើយដើម្បីនឹងអត់មានជាប់ចម្ពាក់អ្វីតទៀតទេ
And she is answering the question. I think she misunderstood because we were speaking about the bhikkhunihood. She said entering the bhikkhunihood, this is the highest level, and for some of us it may not be satisfying and not be sufficient to just live as a donchi, but to really reach the highest level, because there is nothing else that we need in life, nothing else than the spiritual way.
Okay, I think she's answered it actually. Why? She has been married and had children. Many people associate bhikkhunis and the nunhood as leading celibate lives, not having sex, not having children. Is this a contradiction in terms in Cambodia?
គាត់សុំសួរថានៅប្រពៃណីឯទៀតអានឹងខាងភិក្ខុភិក្ខុនីអត់តែការអត់តែមានកូនអត់តែមានតំណែងតំណងដូចជាគេងជាមួយអ្នកឯទៀតណាចា៎ហើយគាត់ដូចជាអត់ដឹងអំពីវប្បធម៌នៅស្រុកខ្មែរគាត់ក៏មិនដឹងថាលោកពោះហើយអត់ជប់ពោះពីព្រោះនៅប្រទេសឯទៀតជប់ពោះរហូតហើយអត់តែប្រពន្ធដូច្នេះគួរឲ្យឆ្លើយក្នុងនេះអញ្ចឹងដែរណាដូចជាភិក្ខុដែលបានបួសហើយមួយចំនួនគេអត់ចង់សឹកវិញទេគេចង់បួសរហូតគេអត់ចង់វិលត្រឡប់មកកាន់គេហៅថាហើយភេទគឺភេទថោកទាបវិញទេគេចង់បួសរហូតព្រោះគេឃើញទោសថាការវិលត្រឡប់មកជាករហ័សអញ្ចឹងវិញពិបាកមានប្រពន្ធមានកូនបាក់រស់ស៊ីចំប្រពន្ធហើយចំកូនហើយបាក់ចំខ្លួនឯងទៀតហើយដូច្នេះហើយក៏មួយចំនួនហ្នឹងក៏គេបួសរហូតទៅហើយមួយចំនួនគេនឹកឃើញគេចង់មកធ្វើការរត់អីនានាអញ្ចឹងទៅមួយចំនួនទៀតគេចង់មករកស៊ីធ្វើជាដូចជាកន្លែងមានកន្លែងគេរកស៊ីដូចជាធ្វើក្រុមហ៊ុនធ្វើអីអញ្ចឹងតាមធម្មតាទៅហើយមួយចំនួនគេមានការនឿយណាយគេឃើញទោសក្នុងការរកស៊ីចំកូនចំប្រពន្ធហ្នឹងឃើញតែការស្លាប់ហ្នឹងគេបួសរហូតទៅ See, it doesn't matter at all, and I have to explain the background, she says. It has to do with our culture. If you compare with, for example, Sri Lanka or so, there the monks, they ordain for their life. And it is very often not their own decision, but the decision of their parents. So they are dedicated to Lord Buddha's way of living. This is not the case in Cambodia. In Cambodia, if we speak only about the monkhood, a young man can be pushed into the wat by his parents and live there for a couple of years, often with the motivation to get training and to have shelter and food, often with more dedication and also some spiritual experience, but it very much depends on the case. So, and these young men can then decide whether they leave the monkhood or whether they remain a monk in Cambodia. So others have already been ordained for 3 months or for a year before getting married, and then the life as a normal person also did not bring satisfaction, and then they decide later, after the children are brought up and some social responsibility, is over, then they re-enter the wat. So this can be applied to the donchis easily. So this is really no matter. It would not be considered strange that donchis had finished their life as mothers and wives.
So it's much more flexible in Cambodia than anywhere else in Buddhist culture. Is that correct?
It's the same in Thailand and Laos.
Right. Your association, why is it so important to form this unity among Donchies? What are you hoping by organising yourselves to achieve?
គាត់សុំសួរម្ដងទៀតឲ្យដូចជាឲ្យច្បាស់ជាងទៀតតើមូលហេតុអីដែលសមាគមដូនជីនិងឧបសិកាខ្មែរមានអត្ថន័យសំខាន់សម្រាប់ជីវិតខ្លួនឯងផងហើយក្នុងសម្រាប់សង្គមខ្មែរផងតើមានសង្ឃឹមណាចំពោះទៅអនាគតចង់បានអីដោយសារមានសមាគមនឹងតែជាទីកន្លែងប្រមូលផ្តុំកម្លាំងរបស់ដូនជីណាតកតងគ្នា
សមាគមដូនជីខ្មែរដែលបានមករួមផ្ដុំគ្នាបានរៀនសូត្រដើម្បីបំបត្តិនៅភាពល្ងងខ្លៅព្រោះដូនជីខ្មែរភាគច្រើនជាអ្នកល្ងងខ្លៅព្រោះអីស្រុកខ្មែរមានចម្បាំងច្រើនដូច្នេះកូនចៅខ្មែរអត់សូវបានរៀនសូត្រទេដូច្នេះហើយវាមានភាពអត់ចេះអក្សរច្រើនហើយដល់បច្ចុប្បន្ននេះបានសមាគមដូនជីរួបរวมគ្នាឲ្យប្រមូលដូនជីខ្មែរនិងឧបាសិកាបានមករៀនសូត្រឲ្យបានចេះដឹងផ្នែកពធនិងផ្នែកអាណាចក្រផងហើយដើម្បីនឹងបំបត្តិភាពល្ងងខ្លៅហើយនឹងបានចេះដឹងទាំងអស់គ្នាហើយនឹងបានផ្សព្វផ្សាយទៅដល់កូនចៅដល់ញាតិមិត្តចឹងតទៅទៀត
It is very much a matter of sharing resources, getting to know each other, sharing experiences, and because our main aim or objective for the future is to overcome the status of being uneducated and being considered uneducated. They have to assume that, of course, many of the Donchis are not well educated, as many women, and everybody knows that Cambodia had been undergoing decades of struggle and war, so this was not the best of conditions for women to be good educated. So this is why we also reflect this situation in the Donchi Association, and we have also the vision to educate the children because we can reach out to young children and tell them stories which they like to listen to and give them some morality and some basic teaching of the Buddhist way. So this is the two things, that educate ourselves but also educate children.
Excellent. Thank you. And she has been married before or not?
បានធ្លាប់មានគ្រួសារឬក៏
អត់មាន
Right, celibate. Okay. And how many Donchis are based at the what address now?
តើបច្ចុប្បន្ននៅវត្តត្រេះមានដូនជីរស់នៅប្រមាណនេះ
នៅបច្ចុប្បន្នមានដូនជីចំនួន9នាក់នៅក្នុងពេលចេញភាសាពេលចូលភាសាមានចំនួនក៏ជិត20នាក់
So usually 9 to 10 Donchis are living there. It means regularly all over the year. But in the rainy season, when they get into the rainy season retreat, then there are around 20.
Right. So really, it's the first de facto nunnery. There are a few monks, but this is really more women working there. Why is it important to form this association of having women, only women? And is that her eventual goal? That's what she would like.
គាត់សុំសួរថាឥឡូវនេះនៅកន្លែងហ្នឹងអាហ្នឹងវាដូចជាកន្លែងទី1ដែលមានលោកយាយច្រើនជាងលោកនៅក្នុងវត្តចា៎គាត់សួរដល់មូលហេតុអីដែលលោកយាយឃើញថាអានេះសំខាន់ដោយសារវាមានកន្លែងមួយដែលដូចជាឯករាជ្យដែលមានលទ្ធភាពដែលយើងមានលទ្ធភាពស្រេចចិត្តខ្លួនឯងហើយមិនសូវត្រូវការធ្វើទៅតាមលោកខ្ញុំចង់សួរតាមខ្លួននិយាយពីដំបូងមកបានណាពីដើមដំបូងដែលខ្ញុំត្រូវការរៀបចំ She wants to know whether she can refer to what had happened from the very beginning. She wants to give the story so that you may get the full picture.
Okay. Well, I know the what was destroyed.
I have ខ្ញុំបានប្រាប់គាត់ហើយមុនដំបូងវត្តខូចទាំងអស់ស្អីហ្នឹងគាត់ដូចជាគាត់ដឹងហើយ
My subject for this panel is women, Buddhism, and books. And in looking over my notes, I thought perhaps I ought to have a kind of colon and say coming of age in the 1990s. Because if you actually look at the bibliography that I have handed out as part of the packet, and perhaps if you would like to keep that in your lap as I talk, I'm going to be talking about some of these books and around some of these books, and it might be of interest and be more meaningful to you if you look at the bibliography now and again. Because the subject of my talk this afternoon is very much related to what happened at the very end of our last session, which is that we actually heard the voices of the Donchi. We heard women's voices speaking of their own experience. And what we are looking at in this bibliography is, in a sense, the written voices of women. And we are beginning to see now perhaps 30 years of voices and discussion and interpretation of Buddhist women saying what they think about various things and doing research in various matters. And as we will see, there is a whole, what I call a whole genre, a whole set of different kinds of ways to look at the Buddhist experience. Now you will also notice, and this is something that we need to discuss later on, you'll notice that the vast majority of these writers, this is English, and the vast majority are Western women, and most of the books that have been written about the Asian experience has been written, at least in this bibliography, by Western women. So we have something to look forward to in the 21st century when Asian women will, and they have already begun to write with their own, in their own language, of their own experiences. And we might anticipate that there will be different kinds of discourses as a result of this. Even though there is 30 years of work here, we all know that every generation writes in its own way, asks different questions. And so what we see here in this bibliography is very much the kinds of questions that the last, if we say 15 years is a generation, the last two generations of primarily Western women addressing Buddhism, what they've been thinking about. So what I would like to do, and mine is not certainly the last word, I just have looked through this bibliography and applied my own women's history background and my own interest in Buddhism to the bibliography, and am suggesting certain categories to you, suggesting certain ways that the issue of women in Buddhism has been debated. To begin with, the very fascinating thing in the West is that there has been an enormous increase in the number of books. Every day there is new publications, which means that there is a very large reading audience. And most likely, this reading audience is predominantly women, but not entirely so. This goes along with the fact that Buddhism in the West has definitely increased in number, become practitioners in Buddhism in one way or another. So these books reflect that. They also reflect a very fascinating fact that there are many now seasoned women teachers in the West, people who began their training maybe in the 50s or 60s, and who are writing books about their experience. And so there are, eminent people in the field as it is, and I'll talk again about them and what some of them are doing. Buddhism and women has also been very much connected with the women's movement. And there has been a kind of merging between a kind of spiritual awakening of Buddhism in the West and the women's movement. So that a lot of the women Buddhists address feminist questions. Not only spiritual questions, but feminist questions, and they are often combined in the books that you will see on this list. So what I wanted then to start in is to look at some of the genres and to say that they have been what we call in academia interdisciplinary. In the social sciences, in the humanities, in religion, we find books that deal with feminist philosophy, feminist women's history. We have books that deal with and use the methodology of anthropology and sociology, and also are books that are creative writing that combine spiritual and literary works that are quite fascinating. So I'm going to start with feminist philosophy, and you know, as all these philosophers break your head, so I mean there are many, many different schools, but I just want to touch on some of the most significant in my estimation. The first would be a book by Rita Gross. And if you looked at your bibliography, she has written a book which is called Buddhism After Patriarchy, a feminist history, analysis, and reconstruction of Buddhism. It was published in 1993. A very, very famous book now, and Rita Gross was going to come here, but unfortunately became ill. We have her paper, her last work, in a sense, that probably on the 6th day will be read and is also in your packet. Now, Rita Gross's work is a very impassioned feminist analysis. You might say that she comes from that early school of feminism that really wanted to show how bad the institutions were, how sexist they were, how patriarchal they were, and she analyzes the Buddhist institutions in that sense. But her plea, as many of these feminists of the 1960s and 70s, was that we have to change our point of view. We have to move away from what she calls the androcentric point of view, the male point of view of analyzing women's lives, and we have to move toward what she calls women into the perception. And she believes that in that way, by looking at the material that we have before us, even if it is sexist, even if women are absent from texts, even if there is all kinds of negative things said about women, we really have to ask different kinds of questions of the texts. For example, I mean, very simply, if there is nothing, we have to say, well, it isn't that women had nothing to say, like this morning. You simply have to ask them. And if you can't find the material then, you might find it in another way or infer it in some other way. But there are other kinds of questions that can bring forward something that can help to reconstruct feminist philosophy. There's another school that is, in a sense, a bit more modern in the West than Rita Gross's, and the person that typifies that kind of work is named Anne Klein. And she has written a book called Feminists and the Art of the Self. And this was published in 1995, very recently. And I don't know if many of you, I know I haven't studied very deeply the school of linguistics known as deconstructionism, but it is a system that deals very much in Buddhist ways with the creation of the self, with the issue of emptiness and the issue of how does the personality become created. And Anne Klein believes that through using Buddhist concepts of emptiness, we can begin to, what she considers, deconstruct stereotypic gender concepts. In other words, to her, there is no such thing as a woman or a man. A woman or a man is what they call socially constructed categories. And in believing that, this liberates, and in that sense there's a Buddhist concept there, this liberates, if you believe that your personality is constructed based on the fact that you had a pink blanket rather than a blue blanket, et cetera, then you can begin to choose the kind of person you want to be. And you can choose the kind of emotional life you really want. And this is a very important aspect of Western Buddhism, this whole aspect of self-realization, self-esteem, and the way in which it is possible for women to overcome ancient and traditional burdens of negativity that have been placed on them that they have not chosen simply because of their gender. So these are two feminist kinds of philosophies that have been espoused in very, very recent time. Now, another genre of women's and Buddhism is the area of feminist history. And we heard Hema this morning speak about reconstructing, rediscovering Cambodian women's history. In the West, women have been doing that, and in certain areas of Asia now, this has become more and more frequent. And one of the really important things for Buddhist women is that we are beginning to hear the voices of women in the 11th century, in the 9th century, that these texts are translated, that they are, good editions are made and published so that they are read. And what is created through these voices is, when asked, where is our history, we can now read Susan Murcott's work, published in 1991, the Theragatha, so that we have we hear the poetry of nuns of this ancient time. Or one of the great contributors to nuns' texts is right here in our midst, and that is Karma Lecce Tsomo, who has very recently, that is 1996, published a work called Sisters in Solitude, Two Traditions of Buddhist Monastic Ethics for Women, Chinese and Tibetan. We are actually able to read the texts of the ethical conditions and circumstances for nuns centuries ago, accurate renditions of that. In terms of feminist history, there has also been an attempt to go back and show that in not all societies were women as oppressed as it has been made out to appear. For example, Miranda Shaw has written a book called Passionate Enlightenment, Women in Tibetan Buddhism, 1994, in which she shows that if you go back far enough in the Tibetan tradition, you discover that there was a whole group of women, the Dakini, who were shamans and who were very, very important as healers and as spiritual leaders in the Tibetan community, and that these women were then suppressed. So in other words, the theory that has always been such a burden for women, that by nature we do not have the ability, and that we're going to be educated toward this ability, is simply not true, because historians have shown that even hundreds of years ago, there were women who were leaders, who were doctors, who had all of the qualities